Good evening and welcome to Global Lens News. I'm Saadia Afzaal. In a world where many governments chose silence, one leader decided to speak. When the United States under Donald Trump and the government of Benjamin Netanyahu launched military attacks on Iran, most Western allies reacted cautiously. NATO partners avoided direct confrontation. Many governments that normally speak loudly about international law suddenly became quiet. But one country broke that silence. Spain, led by the Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez, chose a different path. At a time when political pressure from powerful allies could have forced compliance, Sánchez made Spain's position clear in three simple words: no to war. He warned that military escalation against Iran risked repeating the mistakes of past conflicts. Wars launched without international consensus that ultimately brought instability, humanitarian crisis, and long-term chaos. Spain refused to allow its territory and shared military bases to be used for operations connected to the attacks. It was a decision that immediately created tension with Washington. Threats of economic retaliation and political pressure quickly followed, but the Spain government did not back down. Spanish officials made it clear that their country would not act as a subordinate to any superpower. National sovereignty, they argued, means the right to make independent decisions, especially when questions of war and peace are involved. For Sánchez, the issue was not about supporting one government over another. It was about defending the principle that international disputes should be resolved through diplomacy, not unilateral military action. But Spain's willingness to challenge powerful allies did not begin with the conflict involving Iran. Months earlier, during the devastating war in Gaza Strip, Spain had already taken another bold and controversial step. And the humanitarian catastrophe unfolding through the Israel-Hamas war, Spain formally recognized the state of Palestine as an independent state. It was a decision that placed Spain among the few Western nations willing to take such a step while the conflict was still ongoing. The recognition came after months of international concern over the destruction and civilian sufferings in Gaza. Spain argued that recognizing Palestine was not only symbolic but necessary to revive the long-standing goal of a two-state solution. According to Sánchez, peace in the region could only exist if both Israelis and Palestinians had secure and internationally recognized states. The move angered the government of Israel, which strongly opposed the recognition and accused Spain of siding against it. Diplomatic tensions followed, with harsh criticism coming from Israeli officials. Yet, Spain maintained that acknowledging Palestinian statehood was a matter of justice, international law, and the protection of civilians caught in a war. In both cases, recognizing Palestine and refusing to support military escalation against Iran, Spain's position reflected the same underlying message: that global politics should be guided by law, diplomacy, and human rights, rather than power and military force. What made that decision stand out even more was the silence elsewhere. Many countries that regularly speak about diplomacy, democracy, and international law chose caution. Some avoided criticizing powerful allies. Others quietly supported military actions or diplomatic pressure. Spain, however, chose a different ride, becoming one of the few Western voices openly challenging decisions made by Washington and Tel Aviv. For Sánchez, the lesson of history was clear. Wars launched without broad international legitimacy rarely bring peace. Instead, they leave behind destruction, instability, and generations of conflict. Whether confronting the escalation with Iran or recognizing Palestinian statehood during the devastation in Gaza, Spain positioned itself as a country willing to defend diplomacy over war. In doing so, Pedro Sánchez demonstrated something increasingly rare in global politics: the willingness to challenge powerful allies when principles are at stake. In a world dominated by geopolitical pressure and military alliances, Spain's message was simple: peace cannot be built through bombs. International law cannot exist only when it is convenient. And sometimes leadership means having the courage to stand alone and say no to war. This is Saadia Afzaal for Global Lens News.